Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the session. I would like to briefly introduce you the panelists. I also would like to thank them for being here. Thomas Selzer is the director of Turkey for KfW. Actually, it's one of the leading financial institutions in the sector. Onur is from the Credit and Guarantee Fund and will give us some insights as to how the alternative credit mechanisms do work. Andi Aranitisi is the senior banker of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and EBRD is also another leading energy financing institution. These two institutions we are quite familiar with in Turkey because we're using a lot of finances from these institutions. Therefore, we are thankful to them. Now, first, we will be looking into the challenges that we are facing in renewable energy investments from a financial perspective. As you know, the European project financing mechanism is not very much used extensively in Turkey. We are rather working on a guarantee basis system for banking. And there are some solutions, of course, and there are some attempts for solution to it. As in the previous months, we've had a similar model that we discussed upon. By the way, let me introduce myself. I am the head of the department from the Ministry of Energy. We are in charge of financial institutions. Now, I will first like to open up the panel. We'll have an insight into the institutions. I would like to ask the panelists to introduce their institutions, and then they will be kindly asked to give us some information about the instruments that are making available. Without taking a lot of your time, I would like to give the floor to Thomas Selzer first from KWF.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the opportunity to join this panel here this afternoon. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce a little bit about KfW. KfW stands for Alman Kalkınma Bankası, the German Development Bank. It was founded after the Second World War for the reconstruction of Germany. And when this was achieved, then it also started to work overseas. It is working in Turkey since 50 years and in 3 different parts. One part is in Ankara. It's the original sort of development bank which started with the development cooperation with Turkey many years ago. This part is working in several sectors. It is now working through Turkish banks and financing then renewable energy investments, one of them being TSKB, but also other ones in the sector. It was all the major banks there in the state-owned banks. The second institution is KfW DEG. They have an office here in Istanbul as well, and they are working like a bilateral type of IFC, one could say. So they're financing private sector investments here in Turkey and also in the region. It's a regional office. They are investing in energy sector. They are investing in other corporates and taking long-term investments there. And the third entity is the one for which I'm working. It's called KfW IPEX Bank. IPEX stands for International Project and Export Finance, which means any type of exports, not only out of Germany, but also out of Europe. Any European country can be financed on a long-term basis with the funds. And we have an office here in Istanbul, in Levent, and we have been quite active here in the market, financing projects in the steel sector, in the cement sector, in the shipping sector, in the real sector also. There was production companies, and in the energy sector as well. We have financed 2 energy projects, wind projects in recent years, about which I can tell a little bit later on to give chance to the colleagues also.
Thank you. Andy, now the turn is yours. Can you introduce your institution?
Thank you, Mabbe. I work for the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. We are, let's say, compared to the both local banks, obviously, and also many of our multilateral development friends, we are a little bit the new kid on the block in Turkey. We've been around for about 6 years. EBRD was created originally only to help the transition of the former communist bloc into market economies. Then I think our shareholders were happy with the work we were doing, so they expanded our mandate further into Mongolia, Turkey, then we've gone into Middle East and North Africa, and recently also Cyprus and Greece have joined EBRD as countries where we can operate and make investments. Turkey is actually our largest country of operations to date in terms of new business. Overall, since its inception, EBRD has invested about 100 billion euros in more than 4,000 projects, 80% of which in debt, about 20% in equity. In Turkey, 5% of this amount, so 5 billion euros, has gone to Turkey, which is quite a lot in a short amount of time we've been here. We invested about 1.4 billion euros last year alone. We're targeting about 1.8 this year. And our focus in Turkey is in 4 sectors, basically. Financial institutions, energy, infrastructure, and manufacturing, and agriculture. Those are the 4 focuses of EBRD. Luckily, I think, from my personal perspective, our first project in Turkey was actually a wind farm. We co-financed with our sister institutions from IFC and EIB and a couple of commercial banks, Deniz Bank and HSBC. We financed the Zorlus wind farm in Osmania, Rotor. Ever since, we have invested about 700 million euros of our portfolio has gone into the energy sector. We're active both on the debt and the equity side. This is for the direct investments. In addition to the direct investments, then on the energy sector, we, especially for the renewables, we also have special programs, which I will go into detail a little bit later to give also our colleague to introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you very much, Andy. Now, Onur Bey is representing the Credit Guarantee Fund. Onur, can you please introduce yourself and your institution, please? We'll get back to the or you can directly jump into your presentation if you like. Well, then, I will take the rostrum.
Sesim geliyor mu? Geliyor. Sayın Başkan.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Moderator, our Director General was supposed to attend this panel, but there is another meeting they will have to attend in the Undersecretariat of Treasury, so he couldn't make it. He expressed his best wishes for the Congress. I will be replacing him in this presentation. My name is Onur Cengiz from the Credit and Guarantee Fund, Corporate Promotional Director. Now, in this panel, we will be dedicating our time on our institution, Credit Guarantee Fund, and the activities of the fund in particular respect to the wind power. Now, who is the Credit Guarantee Fund? What type of an institution is it? How is it defined? What are the processes that the Credit Guarantee Fund follows? And what are the business processes? And at the end of actually this presentation, there will be a Q&A time. Finally, I will give you some figures about our institution. Okay, in our country, I mean in Turkey, 99.8% of the enterprises are small and medium-scaled enterprises, which are encountering a lot of problems, both at the level of foundation and during the operation. So the SMEs will have to fight against many problems during their activities, one of which would be access to finances. So the small and medium-scaled enterprises in Turkey do have several problems in that respect. As a credit guarantee fund, we come into the picture with the objective of serving more to the SMEs. Our motto is always, as you know, we have to stay in the play to succeed. For these SMEs to survive and, of course, to grow, they have to be present in the marketplace. And one thing is, there is a history of SME in every large-scale company. Therefore, we need to remove the obstacles before the SMEs in access to finances. Therefore, so as to multiply these stories, the activities of the Credit Guarantee Fund would be quite vital. For the last 22 years, the only credit guarantee fund is the KGF that is working in Turkey. It was founded in 1993 with the cabinet decree, and currently it is a member of AECM in Turkey. It is the only guarantee institution in that respect. Let's take a look at our partnership structure. As you can see on the screen, all the stakeholders of the sector are actually our partners. First being the Turkish Turkish Union of Chambers and Stock Exchanges. It has 1,500 million members in Turkey. The other one is COSGAP, as you know, for the execution of the public support in Turkey, Small and Medium-Scaled Enterprises Development and Support Administration. COSGAP is a very large institution. Thirdly, banks. 19 private and public banks and investment banks active in Turkey are also members of the Credit Guarantee Fund. Also, we have the SME professional and occupational chambers, confederations, TESK, TOSYOV, and MEXA. Okay, this is the partnership structure. How about the equities, the resources? These are the updated figures as of the last week. According to the Planning and Budgetary Commission of the Parliament, there was a law that was passed, as a result of which the Undersecretariat of Treasury is just providing a 1 million extra guarantee, and this will make, in addition, total 2,287 million Turkish lira in terms of the equities of this institution. And following this final procedure and decision, it's the first time that I'm just disclosing this. This is the Turkish map from east to west, north to south. We are providing services. The blue cities are the branches of the Credit Guarantee Fund. Gray cities are the ones that still do not have any branch. In 32 cities with 37 branches, we are active. In Istanbul, we do have 3 branches currently that are all active. The very condition of applying to the Credit Guarantee Fund is that the beneficiary is within the scope of the definition of SME. What is an SME? There is a definition, of course, provided by the Ministry of Industry. This is the one that we are following. The enterprises defined as SMEs are the artisans, agricultural enterprises, farmers, or the independent professionals that are defined as SMEs. The only company that might use the Credit Guarantee Fund, although they are not SMEs, are the shipbuilders and the travel agencies. The turnover should not be bigger than 250 million, and the number of employees should be maximum 40. Excluding the definition that is provided by the ministry, the travel agencies and the shipbuilders may also benefit from our services. What are the types of guarantee extended by the Credit Guarantee Fund? The first one is the risk-sharing guarantee. The second one is the direct guarantees, and the third one is transferable guarantees that we are extending. If I may, I would like to take a look at the risk-sharing type of guarantee. As I mentioned a moment ago, the equities exceeding 2 billion are working in two ways. The first one is thanks to the equity capital provided by the partners. The other one is the guarantees that we are extending with the support from the Undersecretariat of Treasury. There are the differences, such as if one SME is willing to use the equity guarantees, we are providing a guarantee of 80%, a surety up to 80%. If an SME is willing to get a guarantee or surety from the Treasury, then we are basing ourselves on the risk-sharing process, so we can give a surety up to 70%, and this might be up to 75% for SMEs, 80% for manufacturers, 85% for women entrepreneurs, and for shipbuilders it's 70% maximum. Risk sharing is based on the fact that the credit guarantee fund may give a definition of the credit guarantee as follows. Due to lack of capital, if the entities or the SMEs are having problem in having access to finances, we are just facilitating their access to the finances by way of risk sharing. And the beneficiary will have to raise a request before a bank, and the KGF will have defined a risk on this activity, and also the bank will undertake a risk. After the decision-making mechanisms, that SME will be provided with having access to the finances. Let's take a look at the limits. You can see that last week, especially after this new support provided by the Treasury, the limits have also been raised. For equity guarantee limit, it's up to 1 million. If there is a group guarantee, then it's up to 1.5 million Turkish lira of guarantee we can give. For Exim Bank loans, one company can be extended 2.5 million lira. If there is a risk content, or if it's a risk group, it's up to 3 million Turkish lira. And for the guarantees that we are providing from the Treasury, especially the manufacturers do have an exemption to the fact that the upper limit for the guarantees is 2.5 million, and if they are under a risk group, then it's up to 3 million lira that we might be extending our guarantees. If the company is willing to apply to the equity, and for instance, if that is a manufacturer SME, up to 4 million lira of a guarantee may be also requested in total, which means about 5.6 million loan. In other words, the SMEs in our scale will have increasing or incremental limits to be extended. And we have already started extending guarantees to the companies above the micro scale. Of course, there is a price attached to it, but briefly, the beneficiaries applying to the KGF, upon the approval of their request, there will be a commission to be collected. Now, as the credit guarantee fund, we do accrue a commission of annual 0.5 to 2%, depending on the type of the credit and depending on the source and the risk of the guarantee. So the commission will be accrued according to this calculation. It also depends whether they are applying through the Treasury or there are counter guarantees that we are basing our guarantees on, but more or less we are speaking about a range of 0.5 to 2%. We are mostly asked about the costs of the credit guarantee fund, but I have to say that the credit guarantee fund has a legal entity. It's an incorporated company, but it is a company providing public service, so it's not distributing equities, dividends to the shareholders. Therefore, this is not a profit company. As I said, that we have a partnership structure, but our main goal is not to make profit. Therefore, all of the commissions collected will be used for compensating for the staffing and fixed expenses, overhead expenses of our structure. And also for the commissions under the support of the Treasury, you can see that it's one score lower, and there will be almost 1% commission collected every year in cash over the guarantee risk, and this will be 0.3% for women entrepreneurs. This is extremely important for us as an exemption. If the beneficiary is a woman entrepreneur, the ratio will be down to 3%. How can we apply to the Credit Guarantee Fund? The condition to applying to the Credit Guarantee Bank, the fund, is to have a request from the banks. And as you can see, there is a link to it. Your bank should be using the web address that you can see on the screen. So online, it would be sufficient to make an application. And for direct application, particularly in 2014, it became possible for applying directly to the Credit Guarantee Fund as a result of a facilitation in procedure last year. Therefore, from COSGAP, TÜBİTAK, and from TTGV and Exim Bank, you will, in other words, so as to pave the way for entrepreneurs, without the bank in between us and the procedure, for the supports to be extended, the relevant beneficiaries will have the chance of applying directly to the KGF for submitting their letters of application. In terms of using your letters of guarantee and also the alternative lines of credit, you will not be able to you will be able to have a direct application, and the payback guarantees of TÜBİTAK, TTGV, and Exim Bank will be accepted. Therefore, for the financing of exports without the need for an interim bank, you will have the chance of having a direct application to KGF for facilitating access of these companies to direct financing. And all of the other applications will be through the banks on the grounds of risk sharing, as I said, in the percentage range of 70 to 80%. And other than that, of course, you can have a direct, you cannot have a direct application to the Credit Guarantee Bank. The factors we keep in consideration in evaluating the applications are actually a few criteria, and these are not just foreign to the financial world. 5K, as we name. The last K is just the same with the KGF. I mean, character, capacity, capital, conditions, and collateral. The fifth one is the collateral. I mean, if the company has some problem in terms of providing a collateral or a guarantee, then the KGF will be in the picture. Character. What is character? There are some subjective and objective assessment criteria. You know, banking is mostly based on rating and scoring, but still, the requests received by the institution will be also assessed subjectively. Therefore, the main mission is to take collaterals and guarantees. A correct project, correct cash flow will bring a payable credit. Therefore, we need a correct design of the procedure that you are applying to us. When we take a look at the situation, almost 30% of the requests of the companies, there is no existing balance sheet. These are just the new customers who are willing to apply their projects. Therefore, there will be a project-based guarantee that we are extending to these customers. If there is no problem with these factors, but there might be one problem about the fifth element, about the guarantee or the collateral, Credit Guarantee Fund will always be with these SMEs. And now I would like to give you some figures about our institution. As of the end of 2014, total loan volume is at the level of 1.2 trillion Turkish lira. For SMEs, it's 333 billion Turkish lira. As the KGF, by the end of 2014, our volume of guarantee amounted to 3.4 billion 133,227 Turkish lira, but it's not enough. Let me give you an example. Credit guarantee applications are very intensively provided in Europe and Asia as instruments. As a result of the work we conduct, to share with you and the statistics in Europe, 1 out of every 10 SMEs in Europe will have access to finances through these guarantee institutions. But in Turkey, the figure is 1 out of every 100 SMEs. Therefore, we need to increase our volume by like tenfolds to be at the level of Europe. But especially 2007 and beyond were the years that really the volume of the KGF has boosted, particularly in 2014. A newly developed product is the portfolio guarantee system, with which only in 2014 4,200 companies were accessed. And now we have a cumulative number of 26,000 companies that we are in touch with. There is a counter guarantee that we are working with the European Guarantee Fund. And in the coming period, in other words, after the second quarter of 2015, I think the portfolio guarantee will be extended to all the cities because it's been quite successful. Last year, we used it in 43 cities of Turkey, where actually the level of development is lower than the rest of Turkey, especially in eastern cities. And the system briefly was about, rather than extending guarantees to the companies, we give a guarantee to the banks to meet a certain level of dividend. And if the companies are meeting those standards, they will get a facilitation of the finances. And after the second quarter of 2015, this will be extended throughout Turkey to continue our activities. Actually, we are here. So, as the Credit Guarantee Fund, I would like to show you the figures about credit guarantees for energy sector. So far, 57 companies had 86 requests. In total, 44,840,000 lira worth of a guarantee was extended to these companies. Again, since we are working on a risk-sharing basis, there is a loan volume exceeding the amount of the credits extended. Okay. Concluding my remarks, I would like to thank you for your attention. In the Q&A part, I will be happy to answer your questions.
Teşekkür ediyoruz.
Thank you. I would like to add some comments. The Credit Guarantee Fund, together with TOB and the Artisans Confederation, there are 19 banks that are active in Turkey. So licensed banks are directly shareholders to the capital. Therefore, the commercial banks in the market are in direct touch with KGF. Therefore, we have to keep in mind the fact that especially let's say an international, if there is an international finance provided, then the direct credit guarantee bank fund may be used within the system without the need for making any further arrangement. One additional comment is, yesterday we had the General Assembly meeting. Those 19 banks have become 21 now, with the addition of 2 more banks. So we have 21 banks. I didn't want to disclose the figure since it was not officially announced, but probably next week it will be announced. I think the entire Turkish banking sector has been covered. Now, the banks that are members are the ones that can also use the treasury-supported procedures, but not just the banks that we are having partnership with, but But at the same time, if there is an equity guarantee procedure in place, there are 26 banks and financial institutions that your demands may come to the credit guarantee fund. So we accept applications from non-member banks, but the only difference is the members can make use of the services of within the framework of the Treasury support. As you have shown in your presentation so far, many small projects and the financing of these projects have been provided guarantees to overcome their collaterals. So the new decisions for capital increases and together with the new shareholder structure, I think the Credit Guarantee Fund will be even stronger than ever. And I understand that the energy sector will be your #1 priority as a potential. That's what I've heard according to the bank, according to the funds. And I think the biggest challenge before financing of these projects is now overcome with your support, both on a micro level and a larger level. The individual investments of smaller investors and maybe investments for unlicensed wind turbines will be overcoming the project finance problem that they are facing for providing guarantees. I think the problem is about to be overcome. Also, up to 80% of guarantee would mean the project can be completed with the remaining equities of the company. And one more thing to highlight, as I said during my presentation, the Credit Guarantee Fund is also getting guarantees on the basis of the project. Therefore, it's a key point for providing access to funds. Also, the guarantees that these are providing is a guarantee to a guarantee. Project guarantee and the other guarantees are quite diverse. Taking a look at the content, the guarantees not accepted by the banks are both balance sheet and non-balance sheet guarantees that would facilitate the SMEs in access to finance as an instrument. So what is this? Let me just clear that up. This might be a second level surety, or there can be some bails for machinery. Turbine itself may be given as a collateral. We just will consider this as a bail. Therefore, our priority is not about finding a mortgage or a liquid security, but the securities that the banks may not be accepting, rather than machinery, equipment to be provided as security. Therefore, the Credit Guarantee Fund seems to be overcoming the biggest problem in this picture. Small and medium-scaled enterprises, and for the medium-scaled enterprises in particular, there is a bridging mechanism in Turkey by extended by the TURSEP program. EU and our ministry has a joint support, and with the financing of the EBRD, and of course as a project executor, TURSEP and MIRSEF projects can also be the case in Turkey. EBRD has for a long time been providing support to renewable energy in the Turkish market. It's not just about the finances that it provides, but at the same time financial models that it's developing. EBRD provides new perspectives and new mechanisms to the banking sector. In this respect, Andy, I think you will now take the floor to give us some information about how you are supporting SME finances and what kind of facilitations do you have for the SMEs.
Thank you, Murat Bey. Yes, indeed, one of our initial problems when coming to Turkey was that EBRD is perceived as being a huge institution, but I like to joke that the staff of EBRD, including its 40 offices and the security in our headquarters, is about 1,500 people. So we are capable of doing some of the largest projects directly, but we are not capable of reaching the whole spectrum of projects, from the little ones, even the unlicensed ones these days, to the mid-size, etc. We just do not have the staff and the capability to support everybody directly. And in this respect, because when we came to Turkey, we noticed that actually in the wind sector, for example, while there are a few large wind farms out there and We have financed a couple of them, whether it's the Rotor of Zorlu or the Baraj of Energisa, which are in the 130 plus megawatt range. The average wind farm size was to the tune of 30 megawatt, which is a little bit small to do financing directly for us. So for Turkey specifically then, in order to cover this range, we created two programs. One is TURSEF and the other one is MIDSEF. And TURSEF stands for Turkish Sustainable Energy Financing Framework, and MIDSEF is Mid-Size Sustainable Energy Financing Framework. The goal of these two facilities combined was to cover the range of projects starting from 1 megawatt essentially, all the way to 50 megawatt, and with a project cost of up to 50 million euros. So what we did in this case was to provide a combination of about €1 billion overall to our partner banks. We have 4 partner banks under TURSEF and 7 under MIDSEF, specifically to finance projects which are in the renewable range. The only criteria from our perspective was that these projects need to be compliant with the EBRD environmental standards. And given that this requires extra work in order to support both the Turkish banks who are rolling out these programs and also the investors and the developers in this project, we also put together on the side, through technical assistance from the European Union, a team of consultants which stands by essentially to assess both the banks and the developers in the preparation of the projects, but also to support the developers themselves in the preparation of the environmental impact assessments per the EBRD standards. I think I dare to say that it has been a very successful project. The MIDSEF alone, with its 700 million euros, has financed 40 projects in the renewable range. Most of it has been actually under either the smaller hydro or the smaller wind projects, but we have seen 4 or 5 small geothermal projects under it as well, and we're hoping to start to see some of the smaller solar projects. Overall, the capacity financed by this program has been about 750 megawatt, which, if you consider it in the realm of what the renewable capacity is in Turkey today, which is I think about 10 gigawatt, correct me if I'm wrong, Murat Bey, this is quite a significant contribution. It's 7-8% of the capacity of renewable just coming through this program. And this was actually the instrument that we came up with in order to resolve the challenge that we had to address the financing of the smaller projects. I dare say it's been not only successful in Turkey from our perspective, but now we're starting to replicate this model into other countries, in Georgia, for example, in the Caucasus, in Kazakhstan, in the Western Balkans, which all are countries that are known for potential in the renewable sector, but for small renewable projects. One other instrument that we invented, and I think where we are co-financing with a number of our DFI and IFI friends, and Thomas knows this as well because DG is a shareholder, is also an equity fund which is dedicated to small and mid-sized renewables. Together with DG, FMO, EAB and EIF, EBRD has put 100 million euros in a fund called the Clean Energy Transition Fund, which is managed by Crescent Capital. This fund is supposed to invest 70% of itself in Turkish renewable energy projects, in companies where good developers have good projects, which need some extra equity to get them to the point where the project is financeable by banks. And then this is what I think we have done in the last 6 years in Turkey in order to close, let's say, this range of the smaller projects, but also to offer all of the range of products, anything from non-recourse financing to ordinary capital, ordinary equity. In addition to that, we have also been working together with the ministry and with the Turkish authorities in helping Turkey lay out a roadmap for meeting its 2023 renewable targets. And this was culminated a few months ago in the finalization of the National Renewable Energy Action Plan, which was concluded between EBRD and the ministry, and which basically is now available publicly, I think, both on the ministry website and on our website, and which EBRD will be assisting the Turkish authorities to reach its targets towards 2023.
Thank you for this contribution, Andy. As you say, EBRD and the ministry has worked quite closely in terms of the renewable energy action plans. Action plans are important as a document, of course, as we need by the government or as the authorities, but at the same time, for the financial institutions, for preparing their future financial portfolio, they would need these kind of documents. And within its content, of course, in the energy field, particularly in the renewables, there is a horizon that is given into the document for the future perspective. Now, today we are concentrating on renewables. That is the reason why I would like to draw your attention to this joint activity with EBRD and the ministry. It is now an official document for renewables. It's available on the website of the ministry, and since it's available on the website, I would highly recommend you to take a look at it. And up to 1 megawatts of investments, of course, for the guarantee. There was a presentation by the Credit Guarantee Fund, and then up to 15 megawatts of investment. MITSEF program has been introduced. And about MITSEF and TURSEF, I think there will be a booth on the exhibition zone. I mean, if you'd like to get detailed information, make an application, you might just go there to get more information. I think the booth will help you with that. How about beyond 15 megawatts? What will happen then? Then will come in a larger finance scheme. And again, as you might have seen in the exhibition zone, German institutions, the German turbine producers are quite dominant in the Turkish market, both quantity-wise and investment-wise. Here, the KfW, which is an institution of the German government, KfW, or KfW, I don't know how you would pronounce it, has been providing a large financial contribution, particularly to the large-scale projects which need high level of finances. So KfW is extremely an important partner for us. We have a representative of KfW, Istanbul director of KfW, Mr. Thomas Selta, with us today. We're extremely happy that he is with us because when we take a look at the energy portfolio as a program, I think he has a word to say. Probably the participants might also get better idea as to how you are working in Turkey. There is a 10,000 megawatts of a planned investment for Turkey in the short run. Now, we have Mr. Thomas Seltzer, who will be giving us information about the credit policies of KfW. And now we are turning to you, sir. We're extremely glad that you are with us. Maybe we're expected to increase the share of energy as a portfolio in the coming years. How would you say, Mr. Seltzer? Floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Definitely, this is our target, that we would like to increase our share in the renewable energy sector, and we are preparing for this. As I mentioned, on a bilateral scale, KfW is doing similar things as EBRD, also in the cooperation with TSKB and TKB, because we have realized that there are small projects to be financed, and this is best done through Turkish banks, so to make available funding, and they do on the ground the assessment of the risk and the credit decision according to agreed principles, and they receive also, as in the case of EBRD, technical support wherever they would like to receive it. And in that regard, KfW has provided a loan of 150 million to TSKB just last year in order to enable the financing of such projects, and I think that can take you a long way for the smaller projects. Now, in the larger scale projects, because there is still a very large content coming out of Europe, and I think the leading manufacturers are mostly based in Germany and in Denmark, and they are being supported as the Credit Guarantee Fund is giving guarantees for Turkish entrepreneurs. The export credit agencies are supporting the German and the Danish exporters with export credit guarantees. So this is an instrument which allows very long-term financing. We have done financings of 1 + 14 years for wind farms in order to enable to repay the loan over a long period, which allows you then to put the repayments over very small, relatively small installments. I think the Turkish market, both on the wind side, is very well developed in terms of the system which you have, as the YEKDIM system, which provides a floor price, which in previous years was seen as really a floor, and many companies were opting for the balancing market and going into that one and selling into that one. But we have now seen years also, or the first year, where many of the companies, the energy companies, are happy to have the YEKDIM, that it provides them with a very stable system where they can have stable revenues and then finance the repayments of their loans. We have basically here two approaches. One is for, I would say, the mid-sized projects, where companies often go to Turkish banks, and the Turkish banks analyze the projects, and both in terms of the wind yield, in terms of the technical risk which are available, in terms of the connections, etc. And Turkish banks are then willing to provide a guarantee from their side, that they say we see it as a project finance, the Turkish banks, when they have analyzed it, and they would provide a guarantee. And on the basis of this one, international banks can then go to the ECA of Denmark or Germany and get export credit agency guarantee, and then do a very long-term financing, as I said, up to 14 years repayment at very competitive rates. So overall, the system works very well for the companies. It combines the risk assessment of the Turkish bank with the very good funding conditions then of the international banks. This is something which can work quite quickly, I would say. Within 3 to 6 months you could do this. So if you want to develop the project very quickly, then this is, in my view, the way to go. And we have just done, together with Garanti Bank and BBVA, one project. This was larger than mid-size. This was actually a wind bundle of 4 different projects grouped together into one financing. So in total it was 180 megawatts, actually a very large project which was done last year. And we were very happy with the process, how it went, and we learned from the sponsors. The sponsors are Borusan and ENBW together, that they were also happy with the process to do it, and that they would replicate it in this way also. There is then yet another way of doing it, which is the project finance way. And KfW does this worldwide in many countries, in Uruguay, in Sweden, in Taiwan, in Canada, and so on. We have a specialized team in Frankfurt of about 10 people who are focusing on this type of financing. So there you have either limited recourse or non-recourse, which means no one needs to give guarantees, and you can lower the impact on, or reduce the impact on your balance sheet. But it requires very high standards in processing and preparation then also, because then you rely just on the cash flow which comes from the project company, and therefore you want to know in much detail about each of these aspects, whether it's technical aspects, wind measurements, legal environment, and so on, how this works, environmental assessments also, whether everything has been done in this regard. And we have seen here from our side, what we have financed together with a German bank, LBBW, Landesbank Baden-Württemberg, a project in Turkey, which is of 120 megawatts, and where the investor has taken this route. He has done it over quite some time. It was the first one of this kind which was accepted by Euler Hermes as a project finance. They divide them into two groups, and this was the first one, wind project in Turkey, which was done as a project finance. It took a long time. The sponsor, I can say, I'm very impressed with him. It's a relatively small company, but this guy is a marathon runner, and he has the same endurance and stamina also when it comes to doing the requirements. So it was done over several years, but in the end it was completed. He's quite happy. It is with Enercon turbines. He's quite happy with the performance of the project, and it was a big investment for his company. And he's planning now for an extension of another 100 megawatt or so. So this is possible also, but if I'm being asked which way should we go, then we try to be very open as a principle about the requirement of project finance. It only pays for the very large project because it requires a lot of studies, a lot of legal work, so it is more time consuming and it is also more costly. It pays off for the large projects, but for this medium-sized project or very small projects, it can be quite cumbersome. I think Andy has also quite some experience with these kind of requests and how he approaches it. I think we share quite a similar view on this one. I think both ways are possible. Often I would prefer the way to cooperate with the Turkish bank. This is a very well-established system. We know that many banks are doing it, so it works for the advantage of the sponsor also, because they can choose between Turkish banks and they can choose between international banks in this combination. So it's quite competitive. I think also what Turkish investors are looking for is that they're not dealing with someone in Frankfurt somewhere or in Germany somewhere else or so, but that they have a presence here on the ground. I think this is why EBRD has built up such a large presence here in Turkey in order to support the projects. We are a smaller institution and a smaller setup also. We are here with 3 persons, but 2 very experienced persons from a Turkish bank coming out of corporate and project finance, so they are very well capable and experienced to explain the situation and the requirements also in Turkish, where my language skills are not sufficient then to explain what are the requirements and to support the investor. And we know that they appreciate this very much.
Evet. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Burada şunu gördük.
Thank you. We understand that a project up to 120 megawatts can be financed by project financing, which is really pleasing. I mean, this is showing us that KfW as a government bank has confidence in the Turkish market and into the Turkish wind sector. As explained, this takes quite a long time. After the studies, after the works, after many controls and checks are done, of course the decisions are made after a time. But at the end of these processes, in the field of renewables, I think there is a confidence base that is created in the Turkish market. The door is open now, I understand, that this is really pleasing for us. I believe that in the coming years, the number of the projects financed as such would probably increase. The increase of these projects would, of course, require a higher confidence in the marketplace, which is also reassuring for us. We have heard 3 different perspectives in the panel, and we had limited time, of course. That's the reason we wanted to distribute the topic into 3. KfW, as we know, is providing an extensive finance to large scale. EBRD also provides direct contribution to some of the projects, and the Credit Guarantee Fund, as explained during the presentation, will be able to be involved more in the projects, particularly for non-licensed and individual investments. Will continue to be a leading institution in the market. So we have provided you some kind of insight as to what's going on. You might have projects, or you might be thinking about using these instruments as a similar model. Now, first I'll turn to the panelists. Would you like to add anything? And then we'll turn to the audience for the questions. Andy, Onur, or... As I heard the co-panelists, I remembered one thing. For manufacturer SMEs, as I said, in addition to the guarantees up to 3.5 million, manufacturer SMEs will have a term of up to 10 years with an interim period, a payless period of 3 years. Therefore, particularly for the companies who will have a micro investment, since this is an authority given by the Undersecretary of Treasury, they may be applying to the banks for financing of such projects for a payment-free time of 3 years. Andy said that because the EBRD has also some microcredits. Maybe you can cooperate in terms of the guarantees. So this may be facilitating the way that you can work in terms of the guarantees. Maybe this will be triggering a new mechanism. Who knows? There can be some kind of new process. The same is true for KfW, because KfW also has some credit packages for small enterprises. Maybe as a credit guarantee fund, you can also be more involved in renewables, so that the limits can be increased, and maybe also facilitating the process. In this way, we can have all the parties just approximated together in terms of guarantee and finances. Mr. Salzer, would you like to add something?
Yes, I have just realized that I may have given the impression that KfW would only touch projects which are above 100 megawatt. This is certainly not the case. We would be happy to finance anything which is, say, above 25 or 30 megawatt as KfW IPEX Bank, if you are developing such a project and you are using equipment then which comes out of Europe. And I emphasize Europe. We are a state-owned bank, but from the German government, and so we enjoy that stability of the backup, but we have a wider mandate that we can finance equipment out of all Europe. So whether it's out of Denmark, or it would be out of France, or Spain, or Finland or so, it would also be financeable. And anything which is above, say, 25, 30 megawatt. And for the mid-range, we have also our colleagues from DEG. They share the office with us. We have a very good collaboration with them. We have sometimes joint meetings where we decide then, is it better in your or is it better in ours portfolio, and then we make a decision. And they can also come up with so-called uncovered financing, which means the rest, which is not taken up through the ECA financing from the Export Credit Agency cover, can be taken up by the DEG. And we have provided also joint offers in some cases where we were combining forces with them. So also for the smaller and mid-range projects, we are happy to offer financing solutions. Plus, I would like to say, with regard to the topic of the panel, the challenges, I think I would really like to compliment what has been developed in Turkey over the years. I understand from the figures which we have seen in the build-up of the annual capacity which is being added, that it was a longer process going over several years, and we have here a number of pioneers in the wind industry. But I think Turkey can be definitely very proud of what it has achieved, that it has achieved a pricing system, a feed-in tariff system, which is not very high, but if it's very high, then you worry about whether the government can support it in all times. The German government, for instance, is suffering, or the German consumers are suffering very high from the subsidies which have been promised and have to be kept to the renewable energy supplies, both in photovoltaic and in wind. And in some countries, they have retroactively changed it, which is terrible for the investor and the banks. So I think Turkey has a very good system here. Turkey has, as we know, excellent resources in terms of wind. Turkey has a large population which is still very energy hungry. I don't know any country in Europe which has 75 million population and an energy demand growing like this. So I think definitely everyone knows the market is there, the potential is there. Now the financing solutions, I think they have been developed. We have small-scale financing, we have medium-scale financing through Turkish banks with guarantees and international banks, large-scale financing available. I think every project can be financed, and as we see from the applications also, we have a lot of investors who have a lot of appetite to add new projects. So what I perceive from my discussions and also from the panel discussions here is more that the current bottleneck is in the licensing process, which takes some time and could be streamlined in order to enable the project flow to be faster, so that it will be for everyone's benefit, both for the investor, both for the also for the bank, and also of course for the Turkish economy, to have more projects on stream, which is, I think, our common objective here.
Çok teşekkür ederim.
Well, thank you very much for the information, the additional information. And one thing I might ask is, what are the challenges that you're facing when you're applying a project? I might ask the same question to the participants and the panelists as well. What kind of problems do you encounter during project application? So far, the main issue was about the guarantees, as people were just complaining about. Therefore, recently, about the guarantees, we have concentrated our efforts, and as the ministry, in terms of the resource allocation, there is an intensive program that we've been using in recent years, so there is no financial problem, to my knowledge, in terms of providing finance to renewables. All the banks are active. All the banks look to be willing to provide assistance, which I don't think there is a major problem there. But on the guarantee side, there might have been some problems, as we think, but this is about to be overcome, since the financial parties are thought with a more confidence-based policy. Therefore, the guarantees, the guarantee is the project itself, is the principle that is expected to be applied. So we're working with the financial institutions in that direction. Now, the floor is open to your questions, ladies and gentlemen. It might be about guarantees, it might be about financial schemes, or anything you might consider in the financial domain. Microphone, please. My name is Çağatay Gürel. My question is to Mr. Onur. Now, normally for non-licensed or low megawatt projects, do you just accept a secondary pledge or secondary security or guarantee? Thank you very much for this question. Now, as the Credit Guarantee Fund, as I said, most of the guarantee is the guarantee against the guarantee for the banks. Now, secondly, for the collection of the claims, even though, I mean, the existing ones, all the existing claims are considered as guarantee, also the non-existing claims is also considered for some of the companies. Just to get in details, for your existing credits, you are just using credits with some collateral. Secondary, tertiary, or, I mean, quarterly, whatever the degree is, before the Credit Guarantee Fund, by placing a mortgage to the Credit Guarantee Fund, you may have access to finances. Existing and non-existing collectibles means for the projections into the future. I think in the energy sector, it's not all possible to have an accrued collectibles. Maybe after the energy stock exchange is established, there can be long-term contracts, but the feed-in tariff is creating a lot of confidence, and the people have confidence in the market as well. In the eye of the national and international institutions, I think they have become acceptable. Therefore, the small investors also are creating some problems, maybe on a local scale. I think such mechanisms of the Credit Guarantee Bank will be compensating for these problems, as Onur has covered, with the increasing limits. I think in the coming months, the problem will be resolved much better. Do we have any other question?
Benim sorum yine beyefendi.
My question is again to Mr. Onur. For non-licensed projects under 1 megawatts, if the project is approved, the letter of call is received, and the distribution company has been agreed with in a contract. If the company comes with this existing resources, what else would you be asking? What's your name, sorry? İsmail Erkoç. Now, Ismail Bey, whenever there is a request by the bank for a credit, if you're asking for documents, of course, first, the financial data of your company requested. If it's a new company, standard data, including the commercial registry gazette, your identity cards, the basics as to the credit, just to create a registration. But if there is no financial data existing, if you're at the kickoff level, we are concentrating on the project. We might take the project itself as a guarantee. But if it's an active company that you are basing yourself on, of course, your balance sheet or the amount of the work to be covered by the credit, financial analysis of the company, financial performance of the company, and your knowledge about the business. This is mostly important. There is a subjective assessment by KGF, the capacity to be able to fulfill the requirements of the project. The first K is the character, the capacity. Is the company competent enough or experienced enough to do this business? Thank you.
Biz de tabii bu
Of course, the projection is done on the basis of this expertise. Therefore, in the coming days, the guarantee fund, again, will be provided with the technical support as the ministry, so that they will be able to furnish the credits in higher limits to the energy sector. So we will be supporting them as much as we can. So there will be a cooperation in that direction. Murat, can I also add something here at this point? Now, as the credit guarantee fund, there are two ways of application. The first one, equity, and the other, treasury. Now, if this application comes through the treasury, as per the cabinet decree, we are not looking for any kind of guarantee. So whatever that guarantee is that the banks are looking for, credit guarantee banks will take it, will accept it. If it's through an equity, then what I say is the guarantees, if necessary, will be asked. There is a condition of applying through the treasury, but there is a criteria to it. The time of minimum 2 years activity, but this was taken down to 1 year as of last week. Now, it means that if the company has been active for the last 1 year, may use procedures supported by the treasury. Any company that you will be establishing tomorrow, if it's published in the commercial registry gazette, even tomorrow may apply to the credit guarantee fund through the equities. There is no duration limitation. This is quite important for the sector, because for the energy industry, people are just setting up companies, particularly for that project, and the companies will not be active until a certain time, and they might be active with the investment itself. I think the barriers look to be overcome with this new practices. Now, most of this information is quite recent. It's just 1 week old information, and this is the first time that I'm sharing with you. Hopefully, it will be useful for all the parties who will be using those services.
Çok teşekkür.
Thank you very much, Mustafa Öz. Murat Bey, there are just few points that I will be asking you to comment on, if I may. Now, we've been attending quite important series, really, of sessions. And I understand, my first impression is that there will be the Global Climate Change Conference to be held in Paris. And then in 2016, low carbon economy will be the time that we will be getting into. I think as of next year, maybe volumes will be 10, 20 times higher than the volumes we are speaking, because United States and China will be attending that conference for the first time in agreement. Therefore, the coming period will be the milestone for low carbon economy, where there will be a series of processes and actions to be taken in that direction. Taking a look at the exhibitions, my impression is that the Turkish companies are almost non-existent, and a few are there, but they're quite weak. Low carbon economy is the period which will bring risks and opportunities for Turkey. What are the risks? We couldn't catch up with the industrial revolution, and similarly, this will be the market, and the opportunities will be if we can catch up with that from the outset. And the support of the government is not just based on the projects, but made into the know-how and the R&D here. I think Turkey will have a very high opportunity of being the think tank of low carbon economy. Therefore, I believe that so far the government has been providing supports and subsidies, which I'm afraid is not creating that much enthusiasm. Correct me if I'm wrong, and please comment on this. Thank you.
Evet, aslında bu son söylediğiniz
the last remark you have highlighted is somehow the reason for what you're complaining of. There is no high public impact that is seen to be created, but from the perspective of the high technology producing agencies and financial institutions, I think carbon economy will be the economy of the future. It will be the basis of the future economy. Although there is some consumption, leaving aside the energy consumption aspect, there will be the requirement of making a production, and for production, so as to highlight the carbon economy on the production side, together with energy efficiency program on the consumption side, we are also trying to accomplish that extensive industrialization, including the national economy and small enterprises that will be competitive against each other. I think that also exists in that field. As the ministry, I don't know, I mean, we are trying to give the deserved interest in both sides by way of some financial programs. It's not just enough to produce policies or to produce a legislation, but at the same time, through some financial programs, as you would remember on the building next door, there was the introduction of a 350 million investment for eco buildings, for instance. This will be a joint project with EBRD again. A TUREP program. Here, there will be also the high edge technology to be provided in terms of the investments. But on the renewable side, don't we have anything new? Yes, there are. For instance, photovoltaic production. 17 companies are now local companies in photovoltaic. For wind turbines, we have local producers. But here, we should not ignore the fact that one unit or one investment cannot be made entirely by a local company. There is just a breakdown there. As a matter of fact, following the investments in terms of the spare parts, for instance, this breakdown of the side industry is also needed. But I think there will be many sectors that will be needed to activate together, which I think will take some time. It's not happening overnight to increase foreseeability in a market or just to create that market properly. And also it's important to provide finances to the investments. As the ministry, particularly in my division, I think we are adjusting the financial or the additional modules where these programs can also be fundable. It's not just about financing of the investments, but at the same time, local production needs to be financed. TURSEP, MITSEP programs, for instance, or TUREF. These all have the content of the producer companies that will have the chance of acceding to finances. For the subsidies, of course, the government has a subsidization program divided into 6 regions. Maybe we can just put it this way. I mean, is it satisfactory or not? Can we have special concessions Yes, possible, because there is the customs union and also international rules for competition. We're all in the position of following these as well. Also, the local content is getting additional support, which is not a sustainable extra support. This is just to trigger the mechanism. Rather, it's foreseen as a short-term, 5-year, I think, support extended. These kind of measures will, of course, increase the actions in the market, but on the other side, local production would require not just nationalization, but at the same time would reduce investment costs and would trigger competition. Today, with quite favorable prices, you can invest in photovoltaic, for instance. Compared to the prices 5 years ago, there is, 3-4 times different in terms of the amount of investments to be made, particularly in the equipment, and localization of the turbines. Wind turbines may contribute to reducing the investment costs. Maybe it will be the market conditions to provide more encouragement to the process, but we have to consider the fact that the existing 3.5 gigawatts of investment is existing, but just regardless of the last 1 year of accelerated process, we haven't had a very fast investment in the previous years. But in the last 1 year, we have a very good trend. Hopefully for 2023 targets, this will be multiplied in the future. Particularly, we do have 2023 targets. So as to be able to reach those targets, we need much more and more massive, I have to say, investment, particularly in the renewable field. As far as I can understand, by local production and in terms of the subsidies extended in the coming years, we're expecting a boost in that direction, because as of today, we have that observation for the system. Necessary support is discussed with the players in the market, as well as we are doing in this Congress. There are many bureaucrats of the ministry who are attending this panel and the other panels next doors. All the units will be available in undertaking the responsibilities if they may. So we are trying to do our part. And we're also open to your suggestions, if any. We should be working hand in hand, the ministry, and Mr. Minister indeed is following these schemes quite closely, and those, together with those environmental concerns you're referring to, low emission investments, particularly for the renewable energy efficiency, are the themes I think that we will be promising, and we are hopeful that there will be many new local projects and many other projects that will be supported in the future. But whether these are enough, no. If possible, a country like Turkey, who is dependent to international sources by 74%, hopefully in the future, will be meeting her energy requirements from renewables mostly by 35,000 megawatts, hopefully, so that we can also compensate for this dependency. I think from, of course, the perspective of the ministry, this is a barrier because we are trying to compete against imported products. And also there are some changes into the macroeconomic balances. In that direction, I believe that renewable energy is the #1 priority of the ministry as a projection for the future as well.
Başka soru alabilir.
Do we have any further question, please?
Selamlar.
Hello. Yeşim Türk geldi. I am a former banker. I am a financial advisor now. There are some projects that we are working with the investors, particularly at the development level. I also asked to present letter of guarantee where the investors do have challenges. Maybe for the pre-licenses and licenses they can get the letter of guarantee, but for instance for the tenders in solar there are high figures like 1 million per megawatt. For small and medium scaled project developers this might be a challenge. Maybe EBRD or Onur Bey, or maybe that you can also contribute. It would have been better if we have a financial bank represented here, but But I think this is the biggest challenge. So when implementing that investment, there might be problems in terms of providing pre-finances of guarantees. What you mean is about the connectivity licenses. No, to get the licenses, when you're even presenting your offers. I mean, the rest will, of course, be borne by the investors. But if you ask me, for the solar, 1 million was expressed, and it was even beyond that. If this happens for the wind, of course, this time small-scale project developers will have the challenge of finding finances even before the licenses. That will be really challenges for the companies, because for the big companies it's okay, they will have major holding companies, but for the small, medium-scale enterprises who are about to enter the sector, I think this will be a major problem, particularly for the small enterprises, you mean, yes. About licensing process, as you know, we get a letter of guarantee, which serves for the, not to create a bottleneck for the companies, but when the project gets into the investment phase, to see that the necessary financial credibility of the company exists. I mean, the aim is not to push the company, but at the same time, a company that will be blocking connectivity should not be undertaking a business that they cannot cope with. Therefore, the real investors are encouraged actually into the business with, of course, some equity contribution. I mean, we are not expecting them to have a major budget available, but an equity contribution is needed. I mean, for small-scale individual investments, this might be facilitated to an extent, maybe. So you say about 1 megawatts, isn't it? Or between 1 or 10 megawatts. I don't think that there will be a, I mean, for 1 megawatts, what will the credit guarantee fund say? I mean, do you have this kind of application? About 1 megawatts, if you're asking for the letter of guarantee that is presented to the ministry, I don't know about the amount, what needs to be presented to the ministry. For licensing, I mean, you mean for the energy board? When you're just placing an offer of 500,000 or 1 million lira, you are asked to present a letter of guarantee over the offer you have presented in the tender. At that level, there might be problems with the commercial banks. If the company is small, or even when they're major companies, this will be deducted from their capacity of the letter of guarantee. I think after a while, this will be pushing the major companies as well. Now, of course, to get the opinion for connectivity, even before the end of the tender, the winning company will also need to present a letter of guarantee to TEİAŞ for the contract to be signed. And its financing is important, but it's not, of course, the letter of guarantee that is required to attend a tender. If I may, I also would like to say, Murat, I mean, this is about the winning company, of course. For the letter of guarantee, of course, not before and after, I mean, the tender is awarded. It's a letter of guarantee that we are speaking about. Let's say if it's before, it might be the ministry or the energy board. Once the company wins the contract, the letter of guarantees that you are presenting to the distribution companies, all kinds of non-cash credits are provided as guarantee by KGF. So at the time of application or at the time of approval, there is no distinction. Therefore, at that level, the credit guarantee fund may provide a guarantee, and you may apply to it through a bank, of course, up to a certain level. There is a certain level, 80%, between 70 to 80%, let's say. But this kind of security is to be extended. Now, about what the lady is saying, we have our own license applications. But of course, in the past, let's say in City X, when we are to make an application, between 1,000 to 2,500 megawatts in solar, 1 kurush is just paid. I mean, some kind of money is to be paid. So you undertake that you will get less money. If I apply for 20 megawatts and if I am to present 2 million, it makes 40 million. Once I am assigned to the TEİAŞ award, I have to give a letter of guarantee up to 40 million lira. And again, you have to make an investment up to 20 million euros, which is 50 trillion. On top of it, I mean, during the investment where you have to use the letter of guarantee, all of your guarantees will need to be presented for small and medium scale. This is the old method. This is not the method that we are following right now. This is the old method. No, it's currently applied. There is this one, I mean, in April, that we will also have that process. The discount for the production may be given as a guarantee, you can say. Now, when first attending the TEİAŞ tender after winning it, let's say if it's a 20 million lira letter of guarantee, I'm asked, this is a medium-scaled company, and once I give this letter of guarantee, this time I get my license, but when I want to realize the project, the investment that I need to do for the project will be also missing. I mean, facility is not there, but I'm asked to present the letter of guarantee when there is nothing. Maybe the credit guarantee fund will need to increase the guarantee limits. Currently, the limits are as I specified in our presentation, but on a credit-wise, we can just discuss this with you, bring it to the executive board to have a specific work on it, and I'm not authorized to say anything about it, but what you say is, I understand what you're saying. I mean, as a matter of fact, you are the companies that do have a certain level of capital sufficiency. Bank limits, I mean, before even the project is in place, you're just utilizing your limits, and after the activity is started, another bank limit is being sought by the bank and the other authorities. As a matter of fact, this is the reason why you have to use the credit guarantee fund, I mean, before or after the tender. But the limits, of course, you're mentioning is not at the level of the $1 million that you're expressing. The maximum amount starts from 1 up to 3 million lira, and that also depends on the quality of the SME, which I think can also be discussed with the bank. The scale is smaller somehow, but both before and after the investment, the necessary approvals may also take place in all kinds of cash and non-cash demands. Rather than the credit limits, KGF may be used just to use your credit limits on a later stage. And we will be available to support you in that process. Of course, EBRD also is another institution that we can run European Union projects extensively to overcome these problems. And the problems that you're experiencing are important to us. When designing new financial models, of course, we will be considering all of them for the design of the new schemes. I have a question to Mr. Andy. Thank you very much for your presentation. The main problem of the banks in Turkey is that you are borrowing on a foreign currency, and the banks cannot make the foreign currency stable in Turkey. Therefore, they are not able to furnish long-term credits to the investors. TÜRSEF, MİSEF are the resources that you can just use to extend long-term credits. Are you helping the banks only on the basis of the resources? Because in terms of the payment plan, we might have problems with the banks, because I want to have an interim period without payment for 1.5 years. They always insist that 1 year. But do you support the banks on the basis of the resources, or do you work with the banks on the basis of the schemes as well?
I think we work with the banks on both. Obviously, ultimately, they have to make their own risk decisions because they have to pass their own credit committees, and some of the banks we work with as well, they also have foreign shareholders, and so they have to present the projects outside of Turkey too. But what we've been trying to do with them in order to facilitate the project financing is that, as you know, the funding base for the Turkish banks is relatively short. In fact, most of it is deposits in Turkish lira, which then get swapped into US dollars, etc. The funds that come under MITSEF or TURSEF are relatively long-term. They range between 8 and 12 years. So this is very long-term financing that they get from us that is not available in the market. This is one way that we try to help them. Obviously, one other way, but it's not possible for us to do every small project as EBRD. As EBRD, we're happy to provide long-term financing in Turkish lira as well, if that's going to work for you. And we've done that in the past. So that's one other element that we try to help with a little bit at the moment.
Evet, son soru için
One final question, please.
ben tabii bu arada ilave olarak şunu söyleyeyim. TURSEP
I also would like to say that there are interim banks and the TURSEP program. They have to undertake the foreign currency risk themselves, so there can be differences in terms of the ratios. But we have some support in the renewable tariffs, which is also calculatable over the foreign currency. The aim is there to have large-scale credits to be available through international sources. In this way, we of course have more foreseeable investment schemes without the risk of foreign currency rates. Of course, this will be more possible to have an income foresight, but the internal financial resources, when converted into TL, will have some foreign currency risk, which brings some additional cost attached to it, which is the liberal market of banking in sector. They're working outside the ministry. Alper Kılavuz is my name. I have a question to Onur. I might have missed it, and maybe this is a repetition that I'm asking you to do. First, I would like to apologize for that. What is the amount of the KGF fund to be extended to the process? I'm from Guarantee Bank project financing, and of course we are supporting the renewable energy projects, especially in the coming period. For non-licensed projects, we are willing to provide more support. But as the investors have mentioned, particularly about the structure of the securities, sureties, we have problems. Will there be any kind of limitation there? Also, the foreign EXIM credits or ECA credits, do you think that there is a cost for the companies? And finally, then a linked question is, you said for the term 10 years, we want to go up for longer terms. Maybe we can give, longer periods, but on the non-licensed side, the biggest problem is after the 10th year, and maybe you have just explained this during your presentation, but after the 10th year, of course, as to what will happen, there is a big gap in the legislation, and we don't know why and how. Therefore, on the non-licensed side, we cannot go beyond 10-year term. What is your idea about this after the 10th year? Will it be possible to sell to the spot market, to the grid? And I would like to ask your opinion, Mr. Murat, on that. Actually, these are the covered during the panel discussion. If you like, you are already in the bank and you are a partner, a share of the Guarantee Bank is a shareholder, so it's like a subsidy directly to your bank. But what you are mentioning here is now the capital is to be doubled. Last year, in terms of the capital, there is a double rate increase. Now for the placements used, the share of energy is quite small in the total, but the total is 3-point-something billion TL that is achieved now. And with the existing capital and the existing methods, the system is 3-point-something billion, and now there is almost a 7-fold increase now. I think it's 11 billion of a volume we can create. Now, currently, we are in 3.3, and the energy portfolio is to be #1 priority. And of course, as a capital structure, I think the biggest thing that is achievable is an increase in the capital, which has been achieved, and the limits also have been raised. And the rest, I think, is up to a balanced market. Here, I think it's important that the institutions do consider the risks as low in Turkey. And after the targets are achieved, I think the resources allocated will be increased. As covered previously, there will be the carbon markets and the ecological markets. They're all working on an energy basis. Now, when you check the latest figures, it's mostly the farmers who are starting to invest in renewables. I mean, this is how the actual feedback is such. And I think that is the way it's going in Europe as well. Also, there might be some kind of investment for the small enterprises. I think the system is likely to solve this problem. Maybe it can also, the limits can be increased further, but I don't think it's likely to happen or it's needed. I think it's a brand new mechanism for Turkey already. Onur, would you like to add something? Let me just answer this briefly. In terms of the costs, 0.5 to 2%. I mean, our guarantee bank is a partner. Also, we have treasury and equity-based guarantees together with the new limits for a manufacturer SME up to 4 million lira of a guarantee you can apply to. But this is for manufacturers, by the way. I mean, for the NACE coding, for the energy sector, there is a criterion. If the company has fulfilled that criterion, there will be up to 4 million guarantee that can be furnished. Thank you very much, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, speakers. Hopefully, this has been a fruitful panel. The solutions are updated continuously on the sector. And if I may, I would like to thank the panelists, would like to present them their tokens of appreciation for the support they have extended in the wind industry. Would like to thank you for your contribution.